Welcome to the intersection of Black culture and horticulture with your girl, Colah be talking. And guess what, y'all? We Black in the garden. From WABE Studios, welcome to Black in the Garden, the intersection between Black culture and horticulture with your girl, Colah be talking. And today, we're going to unmask a trend in the food industry that's been slipping under the radar, farm washing. Now, you've probably seen it, the slick, rustic packaging with words like farm fresh or straight from the farm adorning products at your local grocery store. But what does that really mean?
Lies.
Are we truly getting products that come from small local farms, or is it all just clever marketing? In this episode, I'll be joined by my co-host, Joshua, aka Plant Zaddy. You see the shirt, okay? And we're going to dive deep into this concept of farm washing. We'll explore how the term farm is being misused in branding to make industrial scale operations seem more authentic than they really are. And we're also going to talk about what this means for real farmers, especially Black farmers who are working hard to offer sustainable and often community-rooted agriculture. Plus, we're going to wrap things up with something actionable: how you, our soil cousins, can help support real Black-owned farms and make a difference in this industry. But before we get into that, let's first talk about greenwashing. Okay, we got to break some terms down. You ready for this?
I am.
I know we're learning together. All right, y'all just buckle in. If you've ever bought a product because it claimed to be environmentally friendly, only to find out that it wasn't, you've encountered greenwashing. It's when companies exaggerate or they mislead their consumers about their environmental practices. Farm washing works the same way, but with farming. So companies use the imagery of small, local farms. They try to make it cute. They use these images and they do that to market the products without actually supporting those farmers or farms or using sustainable practices at all, unfortunately.
Tricking the consumers.
It's all psychology, baby. We're talking about marketing.
It's the powerful
I
thing.
feel like that's one of the biggest things about it. One of the biggest terms used in farm washing is organic farming. All these terms are flying around just to influence you to feel good about buying the thing. True organic farming is a method of growing crops and raising livestock without synthetic pesticides, fertilizers, or genetically modified organisms, aka GMOs. It emphasizes soil health, biodiversity, and sustainable practices. However, large corporations often co-opt the term organic to give consumers the illusion of small-scale farming, even when their operations are far from it.
Okay, but let me just pause you right there because I want to do this for the viewers and myself.
Okay.
So when you say GMO,
Yes.
technically, you just told us what the acronym means, but I really feel like we hear that word thrown around all the time. Like, what exactly does it mean?
Okay, so that's a great question. It's best to, of course, clarify these kind of terms at the top, especially if they're going to go throughout the episode. So a GMO stands for, as I said, genetically modified organism. It means that a plant, animal, or microorganism that has had its DNA altered in a lab to make it more resistant to things like pests, herbicides, or environmental conditions. It just makes it easier to get a product in the end, because agriculture and growing things can be inconsistent, and so things are genetically modified most often in order to have the most amount of control over what they end up harvesting. Some people argue that GMOs help with food production, but others worry about their long-term impact on health, of course, and of course the environment. And just like with organic farming, the term non-GMO gets slapped on labels in ways that can be misleading. They're always trying to trick us.
Always. Just to get the dollar out of our pocket.
Just to get, they do anything for a little dollar, huh? But all them dollars do add up to the billions that these corporations are running off of. It's important for us to get into a few more key terms since you wanted some clarification.
Please.
So let's start with the first one: regenerative agriculture. All right. So that is a holistic approach to farming that prioritizes soil health, biodiversity, and carbon sequestration. And that's when we are emphasizing, how we say we want to make our carbon footprint smaller.
Decrease, yeah.
So in regenerative agriculture, the goal is to keep that carbon footprint as small as possible. So that's an important thing to take note of when it comes to regenerative agriculture. And I can't say regenerative agriculture without emphasizing the influence that George Washington Carver has had on that industry. And he's just too often been not credited. So, I got to say it on Black in the Garden. So while some brands claim to support regenerative practices, many use the term very loosely without meaningful action. The thing about regenerative agriculture, regenerative farming, is it's all about the action. It's all about the processes and the intentionality around keeping that carbon footprint as small as possible. So the next term we're going to unpack is local. This term suggests that food is sourced from nearby farms, but there's no universal definition. Technically, local means, it's in the United States. We don't care if you're in Texas having a vegetable that was grown in Maine. Who cares, right? So there is not a universal, well, there is a loosely used universal definition, unfortunately. Some brands exploit this by labeling products as local, even if they come from industrial farms in a very similar broad region. It's just...
So there's no mileage to classify a local grown food?
Not specifically enough. That's not something that is being
I didn't even think about that
when we're saying, because you can have something grown in the same state and they say it's local, which is still better than having it from a few states away or another country. But the only way to ensure that whatever it is that you're consuming is local is if you can go and put your hands on the person where that grew it or made it, Right. And so that's how we know, can I touch it? Yeah. That's our definition of Black in the Garden. Pasture raised is the next term. Consumers associate this term with animals roaming freely on grass, but regulations are unfortunately vague. And many pasture-raised products come from animals that still spend much of their lives in confinement. That's probably part of the reason why you don't eat meat.
I'm about to say, I don't eat it, so.
I get that. By understanding these terms and how they're manipulated, we can make better choices about where our food comes from and who benefits from our dollars. We got to be intentional. This is not the time for us to be playing around and guessing around about where stuff is coming from. It is a very critical time for us to be more self-sufficient, more sustainable, and everybody knows, or hopefully you will know by the end of this episode, that the best way to be as sustainable as possible is by getting your goods from as close to home as you possibly can.
So to be honest with you, like everything that you're saying sounds like manipulation at its finest, at a corporate level, narcissism.
Is that marketing though? It's all marketing.
Well, that's what I went to school for at the same time. But when you do it right, there's value and power there. But see, that's anything in the wrong hands is negative. So
we're not going to throw too much shade today. We're just trying to educate.
I mean,
but while we're on the subject of manipulation, we would be remiss to not bring up the exploitation in agriculture. It's important for us to also take note of and think about the migrant workers who are the backbone of so much of our food system. Like, who else is picking all this stuff? Many of them are Black. So many of them are Latinx workers who face the threat of mass deportation, and that's leaving them vulnerable to unsafe conditions and unfair wages. Deportation, like that is a threat that they are constantly under just when they're trying to go do the job to keep our food operations, keep these corporations, running, whether they are operating. Well, if they're doing all of that, then they're not operating with integrity. So these workers are often left out of the conversation when we talk about supporting farms, but their labor is just as crucial in creating the food that we consume. So let's dig in. You ready to dig in? About how farm washing hurts the people who are already struggling the most in the agricultural system, Black farmers and farm workers alike. Let's dig into how this affects Black farmers and what we can do to make a real impact. So as we consider the effect that farm washing has on Black farmers, you can naturally imagine that this is where it really gets under my skin, because the real local farmers who are out there putting in the work. Black farmers making up less than 3% of the farming population. And when I say 3%, I'm being generous. All right. They're the ones who are getting overlooked because of this branding trickery. And the general public is, unfortunately, none the wiser. People are spending their money on these corporate-backed farms, thinking that they're supporting something small and sustainable, when in reality, not.
Right. And honestly, when you even say Black farmers, they, like you said, are the ones putting in the work to create something real, something that has true nourishments for our bodies. And I think that that's really standing out for me, that the big corporations are capitalizing on the farm-to-table trend.
Not farm.
While Black farmers and farmers in general trying to do the work are still fighting to be seen.
Yeah. All day. I mean, it's enough for them to have to take care of the land and, just do the job. But I mean, fortunately, I've heard about so many Black farmers who are doing incredible work, from growing organic produce to creating food sovereignty programs, keeping up with the legacy that George Washington Carver started, and truly and honestly keeping up the practice of regenerative agriculture. But unfortunately, they don't get the same recognition. And meanwhile, these big companies can market their stuff as farm fresh, and people, they just buy into it.
And then when it comes to even growing the community through those lands and farms, and then something just came to my mind, the more that they do this, the more that they take away the history in families, that when farms are, lasting in families, it goes in generational growth. Yeah. And I think that that's one of the things that they're consistently snatching away when being selfish, and the trickery is real.
The trickery. Farmers who are working with integrity are working on land stewardship. They are preserving local ecosystems. They're building connections with their customers. They're having like CSA programs where they get to talk to their customers face to face and educate. Yeah. Yes, because some people want to learn, well, how can I get into farming? How can I volunteer with you? Maybe I can learn a little bit more about how to do that. But it's not quite the same. It's a lot harder to do that when you've got companies that have these massive budgets and these slick marketing teams, and they got all the bells and whistles, and they're just slapping the word farm on any and everything.
Right.
It's not just about the food. There's also the values behind it. Like I said, integrity, that word comes up a lot in a conversation like this. When we talk about farm washing, we have to consider how it shifts the narratives away from the folks who are truly doing the hard work, and they don't have the marketing dollars to get their stories out there. So that's why I think it's so important for us to raise awareness about this, because, even when they're trying to do their thing on social media, you try to run a whole farm and a LinkedIn and a Instagram and a TikTok, and then you got to learn the dances. Who got time?
And with everything that we do, when things are more accessible, it's easy to get caught up in the farm washing tactics.
Yeah.
So I think that, like you said, education is definitely important, but if it's not at our fingertips, sometimes we don't, let me not say it's not a priority.
That's a good way to put it.
The citizens of the United States.
Yeah. That convenience factor is definitely, it's kind of keeping us in the matrix of this farm washing game, you know, because like many of us, we don't have a lot of time. We're trying to figure out so much. We are overstimulated, overwhelmed, and overburdened, and we just want to get in the store and get out. And
then sometimes we don't even get to the store. We are ordering food, and it's just sent to our homes, and then we're just cooking it and putting it on the plate.
Yeah.
So really, it's car to front door, and not even farm to plate. Like, who knows where the food is even coming from?
That
for real.
That connection
is completely disrupted.
It's not quite there. So
I think that the average consumer needs to slow down and think twice before getting the food and really wondering, like, where's it coming from?
Yeah, because we have the option before we go anywhere, before we make any decision about what we're going to get, to just take a few extra moments to do the research. We're actually going to talk a little bit more about that when we get into sharing those resources. It's important for us to know the stories behind our food as much as we possibly can. I know everybody doesn't have ample time to do all that research, but we want you to, at the very least, by the time you finish listening to this, to consider how it can be a game changer in some kind of ways in your life. And we definitely want to, circle you back to how can you support a Black farmer? That's a big objective that we have today. So we need to support those real farms so that we can make sure that they are getting that kind of support so that they can grow.
Yeah.
So I mentioned, we have the opportunity to be more mindful, support local farmers, especially local Black farmers. And do you have any thoughts on how we as consumers can be more mindful about our decisions?
Well, like I said, I think it starts with paying attention, looking for local Black-owned farms in your area and really getting familiar with their work and putting your feet on the ground and actually, doing the background self-education and also educating your community. And honestly, don't be afraid to ask questions. I think that's one of the key things that in our community we don't do. We just go ahead and don't open our mouths much when really we have to communicate as a community. And it really doesn't hurt to call up on a farm, a local co-op, or really just learning about where the food is coming from and really making it personal and more meaningful, because you then leave more of an impact.
So let's just get into some more actionable ways that we can actually be a blessing, be intentional, and reach out to some of these Black farms. Let's start with some resources. So it's more than just buying produce. It's about building those relationships, and those relationships that we get to build, not just with the farmer, but there's other customers coming out. Those have the potential to make long-term change. So when you're looking for Black-owned farms in your area, either online or through local food co-ops, many farms offer CSA memberships or operate farm stands. So let me define CSA. It actually stands for Community Supported Agriculture. And community supported agriculture is generally, it looks like the form of a subscription box. And by now we're all very much familiar with subscription boxes. We get I'm not gonna name none because they ain't doing nothing for our show, but y'all are familiar with the folks that prepackage the things and make it easier for us to make our meals when we don't have as much time. It's not quite the same concept. Your farmer is growing things that are local,
right?
Things that are seasonal, that makes sense for them to grow. And so one of the benefits, fortunately, in subscribing to a CSA box is knowing that your produce is actually in season. And it's very important for our bodies, that's not something that we all observe, especially knowing that we can get whatever from whatever store at any time, and it's not always in season.
Right.
But that is a very important benefit. And one of the most comprehensive resources that I highly recommend for finding Black farmers is the Black Farmers Index. And this is an actual directory of Black-owned farms across the U.S. And I've looked at this directory. I definitely see that there are listings that are pretty comprehensive from state to state. It does not list all of them, so don't take that as like the final. There are so many ways that we can get out into our neighborhood. There are local organizations like maybe your soil and water conservation organization, perhaps your local master gardeners, your DeVone, I'm about to say DeVone because that's where I was raised. Oh my goodness, that's what comes up. Your local cooperative extension program. Those are resources. Those are places where you can go in your community where they are already in touch with local growers. So it's easier for them to shed light to help you to find out where you can get your own so that you can get your CSA share, so you can receive your fresh local produce directly from the farm throughout the season. And that way you're helping support the farm financially while you're connecting more deeply with the food that you're eating.
Yeah. And I have a question for you. And I feel like I know the answer, but I'm noticing in Atlanta that there are more Black-owned grocery stores.
I love
popping up.
Yes, I noticed.
Do you think that that's an easier route to know that they are using Black farmers, butchers, whatever it might be, in their stores to just shop there?
Absolutely. I can, because that's where that term co-op comes in. So co-ops, simply put, is a cooperative society, business, or enterprise, right? So these are, usually a group of people who have come together. I think of Sevananda is one of the oldest and longest running that I've known of in Atlanta. And I love that you asked that question, because generally when Black people are doing things like creating a local grocery store, we are prioritizing supporting Black-owned businesses to stock those shelves.
Yep.
And so with it being a grocery store, naturally, we're thinking about the produce and everything like that. And those relationships are, when the person is doing it wisely and going about it as strategically as possible to keep it as Black.
Yeah, we're patronizing one another.
Yes, we're patronizing one another. We're emphasizing and sustaining that ecosystem that we need, that economic ecosystem.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. That was a great question. So another tip for how you can support Black farms is volunteering on the farm. And I just kind of breezed past this, but it's worth unpacking a little bit more. The concept of offering your time to help with planting, harvesting, or even farm maintenance, that is a great way for you to get directly connected in support of Black farmers, because there are other ways that we can support besides with our dollars. We also have our time and our energy, and generally they could use that help. We've talked extensively about that in a previous episode where we talked with Michaela from Black to Earth and the work that they do with getting volunteers together consistently to offer aid to the Black farmers that are in the Atlanta area and some of the surrounding states. So we are very excited to have highlighted and emphasized their work. Make sure you go back to that episode. You can learn more about how volunteering helps to relieve some of the burdens on the farmers while providing valuable hands-on experience.
Right.
And that could change your life in ways that you may not even anticipate. All right, so you can share your positive experiences with Black-owned farms on your platforms. What's a good way that you can think of to spread the word about?
Well, one, you just said it, volunteering.
Yes.
And recording the process.
Documenting it.
And yeah, putting it out there. Because I mean, like we talked about before, if you don't put it out there, no one's going to know.
Right.
So that's only going to help with visibility. And then, there are people who do not like to do research, but that do scroll. So if they see that, you are reaching people who, may not like to educate themselves.
They might not have been looking for that. It doesn't matter if you have a whole bunch of followers. That's not always the point. Like you said, people may not research, but they may come across that information, and you just never know how that impact can really.
You could be closing the gap of ignorance in the community, regardless. Just by spreading the word on your social media platforms. Spreading
the word on your social media platforms. That's all we really want you to do, to help your neighbors, whether they be your in-person neighbors or your virtual neighbors, learn more about how they can get connected and engaged with a local farmer. So there's also educational opportunities. Engaging in education around agricultural issues. This is where we get the opportunity to learn more about the challenges that Black farmers face. Of course, for those of us who are willing to do the research, some of the things that we can learn more about are things like limited access to land and resources. We can read books, we can watch documentaries, or we can listen to podcasts like Black in the Garden that highlight their stories. So make sure this is a great time to emphasize, if you have not shared Black in the Garden with somebody in your life by now,
it's the time.
This is the time. Like, this is your sign. Share the Black in the Garden podcast. We are doing so much good work, hard work, behind the scenes, in front of the scenes, all over the place in the community to make sure that we're emphasizing this subject matter so that we can, in our own special way, make the impact towards helping people to learn more about this. And how are we going to teach them if you don't share it? You know what I'm saying?
Each one teach one.
We try to push it out there. Yes, we want to be that resource. Yeah, and we want to be more centralized in that way. So you can support actual local farm to table restaurants. Okay. So when you get the opportunity to connect with a Black farmer, for example, then you get to ask them questions, right? You get to ask them, are you selling your produce to any local restaurants? You can look for farm-to-table restaurants that work with Black-owned farms, and you can support them by dining at their establishments. But another great way that you can know for sure that they're working with the Black farmers is to ask the farmers yourself. Okay. Don't forget to go back and use that Black Farmers Index. Your patronage at these restaurants and at these farms, it helps to sustain the farm to table ecosystem. And, that's not just a trendy thing. Like I said earlier, eating local is definitely priority over any other way for the wellness benefits and the health benefits. It's so much better. A lot of us are dealing with things like allergies and just so many health conditions that could otherwise, I'm not saying this is the cure. I'm not nobody's doctor. I'm not giving you medical advice, but I am suggesting that there could be improvements to your health if you were to prioritize eating more locally, and a farm to table restaurant or establishment, a local grocery store, I love that you mentioned that, would be a great way to help keep money circulating in local economies. And make sure that we're committing to long-term support. This is the difference between just doing something because you thought it was cute and it was trendy and you saw a bunch of people talking about it on social media somewhere, and actually helping someone to really make a difference for the long term. So it's very simple. Well, I hope it would be simple enough for you to make supporting Black farmers part of your routine, whether you're taking up patronage with their CSA memberships, whether you're visiting their farm stands, or you're being consistent with your word of mouth advocacy. It's not like you got to run up to everybody and be like, guess what I bought down to the farmer's market? There's an organic way to kind of bring that up. You're cooking something, maybe you're sharing something that you made with a friend or family member, maybe down to the church or something like that. And they're saying, oh, this is great. Or, tell me more about this, or just the conversation being what it is around food as it naturally occurs. And then you can say, you know what? You'll never guess where I got this from. A Black farmer grew this. And that really draws people in and helps them to understand the significance of that. That long-term support really helps to create a sustainable future for their businesses. Sustainable future is what we all want to be able to sustain for whatever business we might be doing or whatever kind of positive changes that we're trying to make. So by making these intentional choices, you're helping to build a stronger and more equitable agricultural system while supporting the well-being of local communities. And you're tapping out of the greenwashing matrix. And so don't tap out just yet to this episode, because we want to make sure that you keep listening for our watering moment with Plant Zaddy.
All right, plant fam, it's that time again. We don't just water our plants, we water ourselves too. So lean in, take this in, take that deep breath, and let it do what it do. Just like Farmwashing slaps a farm fresh label on factory produced food, life will try to sell you illusions as well, convincing you that what's flashy or popular or easy is what's best for you. But we can't let the world blind us from what truly nourishes us. So think about it like this. If a plant only relied on artificial light, it would never grow as strong as one rooted in real sunlight. The same goes for us. We can't thrive on what just looks good. We need to be fed by what's real, what's honest, and what truly sustains us. And sometimes that means doing the work, looking deeper and questioning what's being put in front of us. So whether the food we eat or the opportunities we chase or the relationships that we build, don't settle for what's surface level. Dig deeper, ask questions, use your discernment on what's an illusion versus what's reality. So, as always, plant fam, plant more and worry less. Plant Zaddy out. Thank you.
Okay, keep going up. Keep going up.
Oh.
Yeah, we already did this part. I hope I didn't double it. Okay. Keep going up.
But the thing is, I felt it that time. I was like...
Black in the garden. Black like the root of my hair, from the top of my head to the soles of my feet. Hey, yeah. Black like the root of my hair. I'ma go what I eat in the garden where I be, yeah. WABE.